Hello, everybody. Welcome to this talk and this digital transformation case study. I'm Julian Fischer, and I'm CEO of a company called anynines. We are focused on digital transformation with a strong emphasis of Cloud Foundry operations, consulting, and data service development. So in this case study, we're going to look at lessons learned from helping a German industry company building a Industry 4.0 platform based on Cloud Foundry. The motivation to do that was about disrupting or be disrupted. International competitors already been in progress of a digital transformation. The digital transformation for our customer was a must. It is clear that today no industry will be safe until a Silicon Valley style startup came and disrupted it. To say it with words of Werner Vogels from Mark Andreessen, I'm sorry, from its famous blog post about why software is eating the world, where he says that basically today we need to change the way we build organizations in order to create value even faster. So what is digital transformation about? It is about to become disruptive. And in order to do that, we need to find what we call in this talk a disruptive stack. And this stack is comprised of methodologies and technologies um, who came up in the past decade. It's safe to say that the way we build software today is very different from the way we built software 20 years ago. And I can tell that from experience, as my company behind the company behind anynines is called Avatech. We've been a web development company for 10 years now, and I can tell that the way we build software today is fairly different from the way we built software 10 years ago. Looking at this slide, you can see a lot of different paradigms, major paradigms such as lean extreme programming, and derivatives such as the lean startup, Kanban, the agile movement, the entire cloud movement, including infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, or everything as a service, um, and those strategies and paradigms blossomed around that, such as continuous deployment, continuous integration, test-driven and behavior-driven development, microservice development. They all are connected, and they strive a common goal, which is to increase time to value. Right. So what does this mean? This means that the dimensions of digital transformation is more than just technology. It The way today's companies strive for productivity is about a changed culture, new methodologies, and of course, new technology. Culture is influenced by paradigms who map to values, and those values influence our behavior and habits. And how do we actually comprise a culture? It's basically the sum of people's behavior that comprises culture. So it's worth looking at some exemplary values to get a deeper understanding of what digital transformation is about. And as you can see from the slide here, is that this is only a subset of values I've chosen here. So lean in the top, agile at the bottom. You could also replace one or the other, or add extreme programming to it, and you will see that the overlap in values is significant. So these values, they determine our behavior, our desired behavior, the way our organization works. That is the essence of our disruptive stack. So this diagram suggests that our disruptive stack comprises lean management, agile development, including DevOps, derivation of the agile culture, applying agile value to software operations, and of course cloud with major uh, values such as automation, self-healing, scaling, and so on. So looking at these values with an organization, with an existing organization, we have to ask ourselves: are we already living these values? And I'm pretty sure that this is not the case unless you've built your organization with these or similar paradigms in mind. Um, in our example with this German customer, the industry company has heritage of so many decades of work coming from a classic industrial manufacturing background. Um, these paradigms have not been part of the business culture, although lean, for example, and agile both go back to the Toyota production system, so they actually come from the manufacturing, from a car manufacturing company. Nonetheless, we wouldn't be here to talk about digital transformation if we've all already been transformed. So, what are the dimensions of a digital transformation? It's culture, methodology, and if we apply those categories to our disruptive stack, we can see that many of these values have impact on culture. For example, the essence of asking people in our organization to look at the customer value from a customer's perspective in lean terms, or striving for the highest goal in agile being to satisfy a customer. That's a very abstract cultural value, and it's hard and challenging to get this into people's mind. But basically, the essence of digital transformation is to put these values in place into the heart of our organization. So here, the green values are heavily influencing the culture, such as cross-functional teams, determining or describing a way how we should comprise teams in a way that every team has all the skills required to do the job. Or suggesting trust in agile, trust a motivated team to get done. A cultural value is not to tell people what to do, but in order to give them a mission and trust them that they will do the job. And everything around cloud, where automation, self-healing, and scalability are attributes we expect the systems we are building to have, influencing the way how we solve certain problems. For example, how do we do deployments today? How do we systems design? These values suggest certain methodologies and have strong impact on our daily work. So it's safe to say that digital transformation is not primarily about technology, but it's about changing our organization's culture. And this also has impact on methodology and technology. But it's simpler than you might think when looking at pictures showing you dozens of different paradigms, because the digital transformation at its essence has several paradigms and they overlap in value. So looking at this exemplary disruptive stack we've seen before, you can see that the focus on the customer and the customer value is equal in lean and agile. Both say we would like to satisfy the customer, deliver value, reduce waste by doing so, and also look at the customer through the customer's perspective. We also have soft values such as sustainability. So we would like to be able to deliver at a certain pace and keep that pace basically forever. And why is that? Is we would like to accept that it is not a good approach to put a timeline on our team as a burden just to reach that particular release, regardless of whether the team is burned out. We believe by adopting lean and agile methodologies that it is better for the organization to keep a certain pace and keep that pace for a very long time so that we have a chance to get better and improve in what we are doing. Sustainability is a good example where the high people awareness of today's modern ways building organization is focus. We can see that at several values in both lean and agile. For example, again, looking at the customer's value with a strong empathy for the customer. The culture of self-responsibility, mission control versus command and control. We trust a motivated team to get a job done. We integrate business people and developers, and we accept and welcome changing requirements. That we build a team in a way that all the skills are comprised as a cross-functional team. That in lean we say it's about the people. That we say best work results come from self-organizing teams. It's all about the people. We think of the people as part of this, as an essential part of the system. It's not something you just outsource to somewhere else and perceive it as the cheap manufacturing you can do cheaper somewhere else. It's the very heart of your company. And that is contrary to thinking that has been dominant in managing organizations in the past decades. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. Beside of the people-oriented way of thinking today, part of digital transformation is about heavily rely on feedback, incorporate learning, and drive adoption. So looking at lean, you can see that having an open information and feedback process is essential, that you strive for continuous improvement, that self-responsibility is part of the learning, because if I'm responsible, I strive for, let's say, improving myself. When I've done something wrong, I accept I did something wrong. I can do it better, so I strive for improvement. And improvement is important for me. And it's not only about myself, it's about the team, it's about the organization that is designed to work in a way that it's learning by implementing a build, measure, learn loop, for example, as suggested by the Lean Startup, where we take validated learning as a part of our ongoing value creation process. An essential part of the value chain is about validated learning. We build a piece of software with a value hypothesis in mind. Yes, we don't think anymore, well, this is a new feature and it's valuable to the customer. We think of it as a hypothesis about adding value. And we can just learn for sure by building a product release and show it to the customer. And then if we don't evaluate whether it's really, really creating value, we won't see when new features actually take value away, because it's not what the customer wanted. And as Microsoft and Yahoo already shown 20 years ago or 15 years ago, only a third of new features on average create value. Others, they just don't do nothing at all, or even damage the product. So learning and feedback is essential, because we've just learned from waterfall and failing projects and failing timelines and failing budgets that learning is an essential part of our work, and we cannot forecast the future. So we have to incorporate what we learn while we do something for the sake of better productivity. And efficiency and productivity is an essential part of digital transformation as we strive to create value, focus on value in lean. By reducing waste. And what is waste? Waste is everything I have to do which I could leave out and still create the same amount of value. So every behavior, every part of our organization that it's not directly contributing to adding value and it's not really absolutely necessary, cut it off. And in order to do that, we identify our value stream. We visualize our workflows in order to be able to optimize it with a continuous improvement. We use pull-based systems in order to avoid system overload by limiting the work in progress. The cloud helps us to automate a lot of the work that has been time-consuming in the past years. We have self-healing system. We can scale on demand, and we can on demand create and deploy applications. In DevOps, also automation is very important, and continuous deployment allows us to deploy software releases with little overhead so that we can live the agile value of delivering early and continuously valuable software. That working software is a primary measure of progress. How can I make working software my primary measure of progress if I only progress every 6 months? And in order to make that possible, in order to decrease the overhead of software releases, I need a better methodology on how to write software. And I need a platform that helps me to deploy it in a most efficient way. And from my perspective, that is Cloud Foundry. So it is safe for me to say that when approached with the right mindset and methodology, Cloud Foundry can boost your productivity by living lean and agile values. And this is true for the exemplary disruptive stack I've presented here, but you can replace those paradigms by the paradigms of your choice. As we've seen, values overlap to a degree that it's not really important what exactly we take as long as we identify the values behind them and implement it to the very heart of our organization. So when it comes to approaching digital transformation, what we'd like to change is culture by influencing people, changing methodology by influencing process and habits, and technology by picking new frameworks and building a platform. So there are different ways on how to do that. For example, you could educate or hire somebody to do that. You could change a process or bootstrap a new organization. And at its very extreme form, you cannibalize your entire organization by funding, let's say, a new startup that competes with your existing organization. And you build that new startup with modern paradigms and your particularly well-designed disruptive stack for that purpose. Or you transform your existing organization, which happens, I think, in most of the time because the transformation through cannibalization is often taking place by a competitor who just suddenly shows up and disrupts your market. So if you want to preserve what you have, transforming your existing organization today is a good idea. And in order to do that, it is wise to gain C-level attention. Sometimes this doesn't happen immediately, but the transformation awareness starts in divisions being further down the value chain. In that case, we talk about a bottom-up transformation. But raising C-level attention, in my opinion, turning it into a more top-down approach, Ideally, having two movements, bottom up and top down simultaneously, or transforming from the inside out simultaneously is the most desirable version. But C-level management attention is basically unavoidable because of the scope these changes require. So in the ideal world, we come up with a disruptive stack blueprint and translate that into work packages and translate that into what this means for particular roles and parts of the organization, rethinking the structure, the role models, the processes all along the value chain. And this also means that we have to rethink how reporting works, how who has actually to say what to whom. So while doing that, we have to be aware that there are some anti-patterns we have to take care that we're not implementing that. One of which is, for example, the classic value chain that relies on sequential following of management giving an idea to the product management and turning it into a spec and turning it into a sequential waterfall-like development process and then put it into operations. So this strict one-way method only works in theory because, or at least it doesn't work optimally in practice, because we learn along working on the result, and it is a waste to just ignore those ideas. So one could think, all right, we just now add an agile development process where we have an iterative development approach that helps to increase the productivity of engineering. And yes, it helps. But still, the majority of the value chain would be strongly directed, sequential, and a one-way process. So we call that a Waterscrumfall as one of the anti-patterns where there is only a fraction of our organization that has been transformed into something modern and new. And while this may increase the productivity slightly, it is not agile. It is neither lean nor it is extreme programming. Because looking at those values, you will see that, for example, agile explicitly says you have to incorporate business people. And if all the decisions that made before something enters your backlog has been dominated by a sequential waterfall-like process, then you cannot say it's agile. It's not the shortest way possible to create value, and hence it's not lean because it's wasteful. And you don't do a continuous improvement because you don't have the chance to rethink your product idea during development, because that phase is over at that point where you start development. Also breaking essential rules of extreme programming for the very same reasons. And the reason why these paradigms say that it's wise to be iterative and incorporate stakeholders all along the value chain is because learning takes place all along the way of your value chain. So we need to embrace learning along the entire value chain and not only parts of it, by working with iterations and allow feedback to change our original plan. You can describe that with the terminology of actually each of those paradigms, such as agile, lean, or extreme programming. In this example, I'm using the terminology of the lean startup, where you implement the lean engine as an organization of learning, whose sole purpose is to derive a product market fit. So you build a minimal viable product and hand it over to the customer, and then you measure the acceptance. How well does the customer like your product? You learn from that data and build a new release and improve by coming up with new value hypotheses and check it against the customer to see whether it really improved your software. In such a example, the question on how long it takes to have a product market fit essentially is determined by the time you need to build a new software release. So it's wise to put a very efficient process there, which is iterative in itself for sure. So things like Scrum or Kanban-based approaches work fine in the build phase. So with a fast build cycle, you can actually have many reps of this build, measure, learn loop, and test and evaluate your software against the actual customer, having learnings that improve the software. So we can say, in order to avoid a Waterscrumfall, and let's take Waterscrumfall as a symbol for also or other possible ways on implementing a partly transformed organization. It's not essential that you're using Scrum in your development. It is the problem that parts of the organization still works in the old way, and part is using modern approaches with feedback loops and continuous improvement and everything. So in order to avoid that, we'll have to transform the entire value chain. So yes, thank you very much for your attention, and feel free to ask questions.